Hi, my name is Miss Acevedo, and I'm over here. I'm back for another read aloud that the second graders voted for. This one is Wilma Unlimited. How Wilma Rudolph became the world's fastest woman. So, this is the story of a real person's life who persevered against many, many obstacles in her way to become the world's fastest woman. So, let's find out who is this person, Wilma Rudolph, and why should we remember her? What do we learn from her life? Wilma Unlimited. No one expected such a tiny girl to have a first birthday. In Clarksville, Tennessee, in 1940, life for a baby who weighed just over 4 pounds at birth was sure to be limited. But most babies didn't have 19 older brothers and sisters to watch over them. Most babies didn't have a mother who knew home remedies and a father who worked several jobs. Most babies weren't Wilma Rudolph. Wilma did celebrate her first birthday, and everyone noticed that as soon as this girl could walk, she ran or jumped instead. She worried people, though. She was always so small and sickly. If a brother or sister had a cold, she got a double pneumonia. If one of them had measles, Wilma got measles too, plus mumps and chickenpox. Her mother always nursed her at home. Doctors were a luxury for the Rudolph family, and anyway, only one doctor in Clarksville would treat Black people. Just before Wilma turned 5, she got sicker than ever. Her sisters and brothers heaped all of the family's blankets on her, trying to keep her warm. During the sickness, Wilma's left leg twisted inward, and she couldn't move it back. Not even Wilma's mother knew what was wrong. The doctor came to see her then. Besides scarlet fever, he said, Wilma had also been stricken with polio. In those days, most children who got polio, they either died or were permanently crippled. There was no cure. The news spread around Clarksville. Wilma, that lively girl, would never walk again. But Wilma kept moving any way that she could. By hopping on one foot, she could get herself around the house to the outhouse in the backyard, and even on Sundays to church. Wilma's mother urged her on. Mrs. Rudolph had plenty to do: cooking, cleaning, sewing, patterned flour sacks into clothes for her children. Now 22 in all, so there were 22 siblings. Yet, twice every week, she and Wilma took the bus to the nearest hospital that would treat Black patients. Some 50 miles away in Nashville, they rode together in the back, the only place Blacks were allowed to sit. Doctors and nurses at the hospital helped Wilma do exercises to make her paralyzed legs stronger. At home, Wilma practiced them constantly, even when it hurt. So her mom took time out every week to bring her to the hospital, even though it was super far away, because it was the only place that would treat Black patients. To Wilma, what hurt most was that at the local school, they wouldn't let her go because she couldn't walk. Tearful and lonely, she watched her brothers and sisters run off to school every day, leaving her behind. Finally, tired of crying all the time, she decided that she had to fight back somehow. She wants to go to school. She doesn't want to stay home. Wilma worked so hard at her exercises that the doctors decided that she was ready for a heavy steel brace. With the brace supporting her leg, she didn't have to hop anymore, and school was possible at last. But it wasn't the happy place that she had imagined. Her classmates made fun of her brace. During playground games, she could only sit on the sidelines, twitchy with impatience. She studied the other kids for hours, She memorized the moves that they were doing. She watched the ball zoom through the rim of the bushel basket they used as a hoop. Wilma fought the sadness by doing more leg exercises. Her family always cheered her on, and Wilma did everything she could to keep them from worrying about her. At times, her leg really did seem to be getting stronger. Other times, it just hurt. One Sunday, on her way to church, Wilma felt especially good. She and her family had always found strength in their faith, and church was Wilma's favorite place in the world. Everyone she knew would be there, talking and laughing, praying and singing. It would be just the place to try the bravest thing that she had ever done. She hung back while people filled the old building. Standing alone, the sound of hymns coloring the air, she unbuckled her heavy brace and she set it by the church's front door. Taking a deep breath, she moved one foot in front of the other, her knees trembling violently. She took her mind off her knees by concentrating on taking another breath and then another. So she decided to take that brace off. She started to walk inside the church without her brace, focusing on her breathing, doing what the doctors had said would be impossible since she had polio as a child. Whispers rippled throughout the gathering. Wilma Rudolph was walking, row by row, heads turned towards her. And as she walked down the aisle, they kept looking in disbelief. Her large family, all of her friends' family and friends, everyone from school, each person stared wide-eyed. The singing never stopped. It seemed to burst right through the walls and into the trees. And finally, Wilma reached a seat in the front and began singing too, her smile triumphant. Wilma practiced walking as often as she could, and after that, when she was 12 years old, she was able to take off the brace for good. She and her mother realized that she could get along without it. So one memorable day, they wrapped the hated brace in a box and mailed it back to the hospital. And as soon as Wilma sent that box away, she knew her life was beginning all over again. It was a rebirth. It was a new life. After years of sitting on the sidelines, Wilma couldn't wait to throw herself into basketball, the game that she had most liked to watch. She was skinny, but no longer tiny. Her long legs would propel her across the court and through the air, and she knew all the rules and all the moves. In high school, she led her basketball team to one victory after another. Eventually, she took the team all the way to the Tennessee State Championships. There, to everyone's astonishment and surprise, the team lost. Wilma had become accustomed or used to winning. Now she slumped on the bench. All the liveliness knocked out of her. But as the game that day there was a college coach at the game that day. He admired Wilma's basketball playing, but he was especially impressed by the way she ran. He wanted her for his track and field team. With his help, Wilma won a full athletic scholarship to the Tennessee State University. She was the first member of her family ever to go to college. So you never know who's watching. You may lose, but you may win in the end. 8 years after she mailed her brace away, Wilma's long legs and years of hard work carried her thousands of miles from Clarksville, Tennessee. The summer of 1960, she arrived in Rome, Italy, to represent the United States at the Olympic Games as a runner. Just participating in the Olympics was deeply personal victory for Wilma, but her chances of winning a race were limited. Simply walking in Rome's shimmering heat was a chore, and athletes from other countries had run faster races than Wilma had ever ran before. Women were not thought to run very well either. Track and field was considered a sport for men, and the pressure from the public was intense. For the first time ever, the Olympics would be shown on television, and all of the athletes knew that more than 100 million people would be watching. Worst of all, Wilma had twisted her ankle just after she arrived in Rome. It was still swollen and painful on the day of her first race. How could you even do your best run if you're hurt and you twisted your ankle and it's swollen? And then on top of that, this blistering heat. Yet, once it was her turn to compete, Wilma forgot all about her ankle and everything else. She lunged forward, not thinking about her fear or her pain or the sweat flying off her face. She ran better than she had ever ran before, and she ran better than anyone else in the race. Grabbing the attention of the whole world, Wilma Rudolph of the United States won the 100-meter dash. No one else even came close. An Olympic gold medal was hers to take home. So when it was time for the 200-meter dash, Wilma's graceful long legs were already famous. Her ears buzzed with the sound of the crowd chanting her name. Such support helped her to ignore the rain that was beginning to fall. At the crack of the starting gun, she surged into the humid air like a tornado. When she crossed the finish line, she had done it again. She finished far ahead of everyone else. She had earned her second gold medal. Wet and breathless, Wilma exhilarated by the double triumph. The crowd went wild. The 400-meter relay race was yet to come, and Wilma's team faced the toughest competition of all. And as the fourth and final runner on her team, it was Wilma who had to cross the finish line. So she won the 100-meter dash. She won the 200-meter dash under the rain, and now the final race was a 400-meter relay, and she was the last leg. So she's the last person that they hand the baton to, and she has to run it and try to cross the finish line. Wilma's teammates ran well. They passed the baton smoothly and kept the team in first place. Wilma got ready for the dash to the finish line as her third teammate ran towards her. She had to reach back, so they have to reach back to get the baton, and she nearly dropped it. As she tried to recover from the fumble, two other runners sped past her. Wilma and her team were suddenly in third place. Ever since the day that she had walked down the aisle at church, Wilma had known the power of concentration. Now, legs pumping, she put her mind to work. In a final electrifying burst of speed, she pulled ahead, and by a fraction of a second, she was the first to blast across the finish line. The thundering cheers matched the thundering of her own heart. She had made history. She had won for an astounding third time. At her third ceremony that week, as the band played the Star-Spangled Banner, Wilma stood tall and still like a queen, the last of her 3 Olympic gold medals hanging around her neck. Wilma Rudolph, once known as the sickliest child in Clarksville, Tennessee, had become the fastest woman in the world. And that is the end. This is the story of Wilma Rudolph, unlimited. Absolutely. What do we learn from her story? Did she triumph against many obstacles? Can you do that too, even when you think it's impossible? Yes, you can. She persisted. Have a great day. This was Wilma Unlimited, read aloud by Miss Acevedo. Stay tuned for more.